Welcome to another hot and spicy episode of the Large Blast podcast, the Warhammer podcast that isn't afraid to save your soul, because this week we're going to be rolling out our initiative to get kids off of chaos. I'm your host, Stoney, and I'm joined, as always, by my hosts, Welshie.
Don't ever turn away from the Emperor's light.
And Matt.
The rewards of tolerance are treachery and betrayal.
So we like to get things kicking off with a little something we called Hobbies Goings On, where we take a look at some of the goings on that have been goings on in the hosts' lives. So Matt, I think you've had a recent victory. Well, do you want to kick us off with some of your good news?
Won overall in a fun tournament at the Dice Saloon, our local fun place to go and hang out, which is very good, and met a few people who enjoy listening to the podcast. So it was great to meet them. Great to meet some more 40k players. And I know that we were all there, so it's nice to all be in the same building for once and not just on Zoom where we record the podcast. Aside from that, I've been relatively busy in the evenings with hobby. I've kind of accepted that there's no way in hell I'll do my armies on parade board, so that has gone to the wayside. But I've started to assemble some of the Indomitus box that I've saved, and I'm going to do them as some Templar models. But I managed to resist buying any of the new stuff. But I've got my Grimaldus that I'm going to do, so I'm just going to allow myself to get caught up in the hype to do that. And I managed to buy some cheap Skitarii on eBay. Even though they are worth their weight in gold at the moment, I managed to get a good deal. So I've got to paint them up ready for the doubles tournament that me and Welshie are representing the podcast in just under a month.
Fear the Shadow of Olympus.
Shadow of Olympus, yeah.
All right, so what's this about? So this is a Skitarii, and what are you bringing, Welshie?
Oh, Shadows and Trickery, the Raven Guard. Yeah, looking forward to it. We did the last one they did, I think, before the world shut down, didn't we, Matt? It was great. Yeah. It's held in battle, so, centuries of war history in the town of Battle in Hastings. If you're a foreign listener, check out the Battle of Hastings. Wonderful time. But yeah, it's a good kind of competitive but not super over the top fun tournament. So looking forward to that.
Go. Well, the Battle of Hastings will become the second best well-known battle to take place in battle after you guys clash in this doubles tournament, I should imagine.
Right.
All right, so Welshie, what have you been up to? Anything interesting?
Well, Matt's still checking the timetables for the hype train, but I'm got myself a first-class ticket. I'm right up the front of the hype train, and I'm now 5 models deep into my new Black Templars army.
Plugged your phone into charge in the first class area of the hype train. Cool.
That's it. As Matt says, I think my leftover models in the Indomitus box, the Judiciar.
Is that what you're using?
Yeah,
cool.
The Judiciar and the Assault Intercessors and the Ancient all really lend themselves to the Black Templars aesthetic. So I've started off with them. I'm going to have an Assault Intercessor heavy army, and I went straight online on Saturday at 9 a.m. or whatever it was and bought myself the army starter set. And that is hopefully arriving in the post tomorrow with the new codex.
Amazing. So that is amazing.
Crikey.
More on Templars in a minute, because there's a few juicy rules, but expect more after I've had a good flick through the codex.
And Games Workshop were they didn't have limited copies, did they? I kept getting emails from Games Workshop buy your Black Templars, buy your Black Templars. And I was locking myself in my room at home, no, don't stop tempting me.
Listeners at home, this is a matter of time now before Matt buys these Black Templars.
No.
Mark the episodes down.
I've been enjoying painting them. I'm trying to work out a way of doing them quite quick. I'm going with the kind of classic paint scheme. I'm going to try and do the crosses on the face, but I want to try and do them contrast and try and get them out quite quick. So just playing around with some different techniques.
I'm going to have a look. I'll have a look. I've got some of the more recent White Dwarfs here. I'll have a look. I keep meaning to find it, but about a year and a half ago, they did a campaign in White Dwarf, and one of the heavy metal painters, I can't remember his name, did a Black Templars army, and it's a really quick recipe with doing some grey highlights and whatever, and then going over with contrast. And I keep wanting that. That's what I was going to do with the Indomitus box. If I find it, I'll
So yeah, it sounds like what I've done. So I base coated.
You've worked
grey.
it out? Okay,
yeah, I base coated grey, Black Templars contrast for the armor, red Flesh Terrors red for the red bits, and that all goes on nice. And then you have to spend like 6 coats getting the white to shine really white. I've actually gone for a kind of bone white rather than a bright white. And then I've gone like classic Blanchitsu, so all of the chainswords have got the chevrons, the black and yellow chevrons on to like clash with the red of the pauldrons. So I want to go full 90s with them, because that all of the models releases is like full 3rd edition. So I'm going full 3rd edition with it. What about you, Stoney? What have you been up to?
Well, nothing Warhammer wise since the last time I saw you guys, but the last time I saw you guys was obviously at the Dice Saloon, which is something which I haven't done for many years. Gone and geeked out with a bunch of geeks down at the old Geek Palace, so that was a nice thing.
What did you reckon?
Do. I enjoyed it, I mean, I planned to come down so that Welshie could show me a little bit of how to play some of this Warhammer game that turns out I'm hosting a podcast all about. So, that was kind of the plan. I was going to get down there and learn some rules, and I was all excited. I thought like, it'd be cool. I'll learn some more stuff. But then it was like, I've got to get up at 10 in the morning and be there for 4 hours. And I was like, hang on a minute. But that was why I got out of this shit in the first place. So that part was a bit of like an eye opener, but it was really nice to come down and like meet people that listen to the show, which I thought was really cool, because like, obviously when you're here making the show, you don't always get to realize if people are listening to it or not. So, bigging up some of the fans that are listening, especially one guy came out and said, I really like the editing you do on the show, Stoney. So, I can only promise to keep it classy, suave.
Damn, where'd you find this?
Smoke weed every day.
And as debonair as it has been up until now.
Shout out to Duck.
Yeah. So that was good. So yeah, just bigging up the Large Blast podcast listeners. I'm still definitely thinking about rejoining the Warhammer community, but like the Warhammer community that starts at 3, and like it, and they play like one game and then they have a few pints or something. But I'm like, because Matt, you got there at 10 in the morning on a Sunday, right? And you didn't leave till what, like 7 or some shit?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you
Love
see that.
Well, she's done that like what, 4 or 5 weekends in a row.
Don't get me wrong. I know. Hey, I know this is what you guys are up to, but the grim dark reality of what that
my God
dawned on me on Sunday. So
I did when I got home. I felt it by the time I'd walked home, and I felt for Jeff, because our listener Jeff has been driving into Brighton an hour in from London. That's 4 weekends in a row. He's back down next weekend in the ITC tournament. A nutcase, yeah. But hey,
she's a cruel mistress is Warhammer 40,000. It's the news. Wow. It's the chuffing news.
Have you heard 6s are now 4s?
It's the news.
Gene Stealer limo's back.
News. All right, it ain't the Green Templars, it ain't the Red Templars, it's the Black Templars, and they're back and they're bringing some hot and spicy new rules with them. So, Welshie, what have we got here?
Yeah, so as I said, I am fully aboard and I'm excited to get the codex and look for it properly tomorrow. But I thought we'd just discuss, because we like talking about how kind of thematic the rules are now. And I think this Black Templars codex has gone full thematic. And they've done what you get in your AdMech book, Matt, which I think is a really cool addition to the game, where you select a bonus and you get a downside from also having that bonus. It makes it really tactical. So they've got these things called vows, which are called suffer not the unclean to live, uphold the honor of the emperor, bore the witch, destroy the witch, and accept any challenge no matter the odds, which just sound great. And you get to pick them at the start of every game. So when you know who you play in, that's when you pick the vow that you're going to use, which is cool. So if you're playing some witchy Thousand Suns, you can pick that one. If you're playing some horrible mutants or Xenos, you can pick the unclean one. And I just think they're really cool. The accept any challenge basically means you're way better in combat, but you can't fall back. Is there anything more Black Templar than not being able to run away?
So you can't deliberately pull your guys out of combat to shoot at them.
Yeah, once they're in,
you're stuck in combat. Yeah, that's good rule. That's like old school Warhammer. The 4th edition Black Templar Codex for me has always been the best codex that Games Workshop have ever produced. The book is amazing. The art is amazing. It's just for the old range. I can't remember how they used to work, but they had these 4 vows. It's so good that they brought that back, because that was one of the things that made the Codex so special at the time, that you had a real army that you used on the board that really reflected its lore on the tabletop. It's great. That can't fall back is amazing.
Yeah, I think
it's so good.
I mean, it's going to stuff you up in certain matchups, but that's part of the fun. If you get in there first with your +1 attack and your extra AP with 20 assault intercessors, it's nothing to fall back from other than like a muddy, blood-stained pool. And then the other thing that's in that I thought was really nice and thematic is they've got this relic bearers thing where instead of just a relic on a character, you can take a model within a unit, so just like a normal troops unit can take a relic that inspires the whole unit. One of which is the holy hand grenade.
Oh yeah,
so it is.
It is. The holy orb on a roll a d6 on a 2+. The unit you're fighting against suffers d3 mortal wounds and fights last. And we all know how important fights last is when you're playing now. If you can force a unit to go last in combat, it could be the end of the day for them. And it's a fucking holy hand grenade, and it's actually on the model now. You get it on the sprue, and you can put it on somebody.
We had a question in our game actually on the weekend that none of the guys could answer. I have stratagems that make you fight last, and somebody I was playing with had stratagems to make me fight last, and we both used the stratagems to make us fight last. And then we were like, what do we do now?
They cancel each other out and you go back to the normal order of play. There is an FAQ on it, which I can send you.
Oh yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah,
there is an FAQ now that stipulates exactly what happens in fights first rules, fights last rules, charging, etc. And it's actually quite clear, but it's a long old document.
Cool. Well, if you
heard it here first.
So Black Templars, super thematic. I'm really excited to go properly into the Codex tomorrow, and I'm going to have like as many chaplains as I'm fucking allowed, because they're going to boost everything to high hell, it would seem. And you can get out of a Land Raider after it moves if you're Black Templar.
Excellent.
Finally
That's
means
so good.
I will put my Land Raider back on the board.
So good. That is
Finally.
so good.
Finally.
Arkan Land's pride and joy farming equipment finally hitting the battlefield once again. All right, so Gav Thorpe, if you're listening, put your hands over your ears, because Welshie's mad. He's pissed off, and he's pissed off at Games Workshop. So, Welshie, what have you got?
I don't know if it's just me. I reckon maybe some of you guys will be too if you've missed some of this. The first thing, which I think is just straight up stupid, is they've just been advertising these old foes bundles, these like thematic bundles, where you get 0 discount. It's like, come online and buy this bundle of various Space Marine boxes, but we're not going to give you anything off. It's exactly the same price as if you bought them individually.
Yeah, because they're like reinforcements for your Indomitors set or whatever. What? And there's no discount?
No.
Games Workshop have done this before. I'm sure I've seen this before, where they've
right.
offered deals, and I've looked at it, and you add up the costs, and you think, yeah, what is the point? There are definitely other companies do this.
It just seems mad that in a world where you can go on a different website and get 20% off, Games Workshop can't put together some kind of Games Workshop only bundle where you save some money.
But that's the point though. Can you buy this on other websites?
No, but you could buy the boxes individually for 20% less.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. It would make sense if Games Workshop did this pre-packaged box at the same price as all the individual units added together, but on those websites for 20% less, because then you'd go on and buy it there anyway, and you'd still get a discount. I don't know. I don't know.
It's very weird. It's very strange.
I mean, someone's going to buy it. I think the terrain set I bought on Games Workshop, I think that didn't save me any money. And I kept trying to check it, and I kept thinking like, Games Workshop are like, they're doing one on me.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting tricked into buying this, but in the end I just thought, oh fuck it.
Did it anyway, just gave in. Like our bad boys later in the episode.
I needed to use that voucher, and I needed to get that free figure. So
Matt bamboozled by Games Workshop again.
Yeah. I I was thinking,
the
I was going
countdown to the Templars takes one strike forward.
Yeah. So what is this set then? That's kind of what we're
Nothing.
asking, isn't
It's
it? It's just
nothing.
like, it's just nothing. It's just a list.
Does
a
it come in a
shopping list
box?
already done
Do
for
they-
you.
I don't know.
Do they
You
make
probably
a
just get it
special
in a
box for
carrier
it?
bag or something. Maybe you get one of those 50p bags. Anyway, that's that, right? I'm only a quarter of the way through the rage. We haven't even got to the
Okay.
big stuff yet.
More rage. What's grinding your gears, Welshie?
It's good because we don't normally do lots of moaning about GW, but I feel I have to on these things. Right, the next thing is this picture we're looking at now of the, as James Workshop describe it, sensational special miniature for Warhammer Day, which is just a Blade Guard Lieutenant. What's different to it from any other Blade Guard Lieutenant other than they've switched out the face?
Is it free?
No, but it's sensational.
Yeah.
The Sigmar one is this really cool, like, vampire lord thing. And you just think, could you not put a bit of effort into making something cool for 40k? Like a little while ago, they had that. Do you remember the Necron guy? It was all hunched over and crooked
that was
and
cool.
really. This is just a standard Space Marine.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. See,
I mean, honestly, I think I've said before, but I don't like Games Workshop hiding certain models away to events and things. I mean, it's cool that you get one for going to Games Day. I get why they do it, but at the same time, if it's a model I never have any chance of getting hold of, at least I'm like, oh, phew, I don't like the model, so at least I won't be upset when I can never get my hands on it. So I at least have that to comfort me.
These big guys with the shields, whatever they are,
Blade Guard.
They could have done one that was like in a really dynamic pose, like really swinging that shield and massive sword around, like a ballerina in power.
Because this looks exactly. This is the same
Boom!
pose. Yeah. This is like the same pose and everything as the other guy, isn't it? I mean, it's the same fucking model, just with a different head on, right?
Yeah.
The vampire is an amazing model.
Yeah, it is cool. Yeah.
So, next part of the rage. You remember last episode, listeners, we talked about some of the LGT competitive gaming and how there's some serious bias, etc., and there's some things that need fixing. So this week, Games Workshop released their own home-written, this is a bit conspiracy theory I'm getting into now. Yeah, Games Workshop have produced their own graph of their own events, which is fine, it's fair enough, it's nice to put out, but they've only put the win rates, and they've only, as a percentage, they've not said how many armies are each one. So, for instance, I believe there was one Tyrannid player at all of these events. And
Really?
It's like 10% win rate. So what does that mean? It could have been one crap player. Like, it doesn't mean anything to not be stating that, and to not be stating how many of these armies were in one, like 6 games in a row. Just to, you know what I'm saying? Like, of the top 5, all 5 could have been AdMech. And I would look at this, and I like to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I was thinking, like,
how can Imperial Knights win?
Exactly, because I don't know, maybe there was just one player who was a really good Warhammer player. So it just seemed silly. This is before I even get into the science of presenting a bar chart on a slant.
Yeah.
It seemed to me like they were just kind of whitewashing over the fact that everyone had been complaining about the LGT and there's all this bias that people need to fix, which is clearly there. And just going, nah, mate, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It just seemed really weird, this article, to just be like, no, it's all good. We're not really going to kind of respond to any of that feedback. We'll just wash over it.
It is quite strange. It is quite weird that Chaos Knights would be at the bottom and Imperial Knights would be at the top. I mean, are they not? They can't be too dissimilar from each other, can they? I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. We obviously don't understand this list well enough to know what numbers Games Workshop have been crunching, but it does look a bit fishy.
What's Imperium?
That's like mixed. So if you've got mixed Imperium keyword. But yeah, I mean, it just seemed like off the back of a week where everyone was complaining that there was this crazy supremacy of Drakari and AdMech in the LGT, to just release an article that was like, everything's fine, look how balanced everything is.
What's the context of this graph? What are they saying?
Their events that they were running in the States over the past couple of weeks. Anyway, I'm just putting it out there. I'm just going to leave a little seed of conspiracy out there and go, it would just be nice to see them respond to the feedback from the LGT and go, oh, we've realised that there's some balancing changes and we'll try and get that sorted.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's true. You can make a graph look however you want to make the graph look like. If you want to spin it in a particular direction. And the graph is meaningless, as you say, because you don't know how many armies are within, how many players there are within each army.
Exactly.
So it's just meaningless. And for the AdMech to be in the middle, that's just silly.
But it could be. So the AdMech could be in the middle. There could have been 30 AdMech players, 15 of whom are rubbish and 15 are really good. But if those top 15 came positions 1 to 15, then
that's
anyway.
where it's it's stupid.
Maybe we've got a bit too sciencey there, but whatever. I think it's worth pointing out. So the last thing, though, the real rage. My real rage.
The real rage. The deepest rage burning within you, Welshie. What is it?
Fucking Tyranids. Right. And Guard, actually. They're both in the shit here. I am fed up of Games Workshop producing books before they've finished producing the codices. This isn't about it taking a long time for codices. This is the conscious decision for the company to put a team of people who write books and rules on making a book that isn't a codex before all the armies have got a new codex. It's wrong. It only includes rules for one faction of Tyranids, so not like the whole thing anyway. Cadia gets some rules. It basically means...
What book is this we're talking about?
Warzone Octarius, the new thing that's coming out.
The new,
But so they've got... It's just a base. It doesn't even matter that it's not got very many rules in. It's just the simple fact that in a game that's currently unbalanced, they have people who are writing books and rules not producing the codexes. The rules for the game that they make should come before anything else, before any fluff, before any background, before anything.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, because if you cast your minds back to the launch of 8th edition, they just came out and said, look, new edition of 40k, all your existing codices, they're out of date. Here are the rules for all of the units. And it's all updated for the new edition. It's all in a book. And here's the rules. And then we'll slowly be updating the codexes specifically for the 8th edition. And I think maybe at the time, some people were like, I hate this, blah, blah, blah. But it definitely proved to be the right move to make, because it just put everyone on an even playing field. And then the codexes trickled through. To be honest, when the book came out, I did think to myself, it's not that bad, because AdMech had the same thing. Like AdMech had in 8th edition towards the end, they had the whatever books,
one of the Psychic Awakening ones, Book of Rust.
They had basically half a codex full new models that weren't in the original codex. But then just now I was thinking, well, it's not really the same, because at that point AdMech we had the chapter approved, we had the special rules for the 8th edition launch built for the new game system. Then we had one of the first codexes built for that game system, whereas a Tyranid player is still using 8th edition codex in 9th edition 40k with some bollocks. The Imperial Guard stuff, the Cadian stuff, seems to have gone down well on the Imperial Guard groups. But
again, it's a stopgap when they could have.
No codex.
This book could have been either of the codex. And the other thing is, if this does just include a rule, and the next codex release in December is Tyranids, you've got to buy 2 books to get your hands on all the rules. So either the codex is coming really soon, or
this is like,
not.
You're absolutely right. This is like releasing DLC before the computer game comes out. This is like, this is the wrong way around, and it's unfair. The Tyranid army is looking like a cake in the rain at the moment, sat there in the middle of everyone's watching it just dissolve into the ground. It needs some spicing up. We've got to get it back and living again. So
give me more biomass.
I'm pissed off, Welshie. You've got me riled up.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like this. This is garbage. I'm pissed off about this. Give the Tyranids some love, Games Workshop.
It doesn't even need to be the Tyranids. This could have been the Chaos Codex. It could have been literally any army's codex, and I would be happy. It's not because it's my army. It's just that there are armies without one. I'm standing up for everyone.
Get that guy that's making these shitty graphs off the graphs and get him on fucking the model factory.
And the last bit of news, Jevis Johnson, the creator of Blood Bowl, retired last month or 2 months ago. So have a good retirement, Jevis. I know you're listening to this podcast. Yeah.
I hope you get the traditional retirement carriage clock that we sent you from the Large Blast podcast in the post. Don't mention it. Although we did leave the receipt in. If you could send us the monetary value, we would appreciate it. Thank you. In fact, actually send us some more. We've spent enough money on your models. Send us.
I was going to say,
twice as
send us
much as that
Warhammer.
clock
No,
is
just send us
worth.
Warhammer.
You're
Send us
coming for a
on my
chat.
fucking money
Retiring's
I've been
boring,
paying you for
right?
years.
Terminator.
Rolling in my 6-4.
Hello everyone, Stoney here from the Large Blast podcast, and I'm joined today by a very special guest to talk about a very important subject.
I'm Michael Jordan. McDonald's restaurants have given me this time to talk to you about something we both really care about.
Thank you, Michael and McDonald's Restaurants. Now, listeners at home know we like to have a few goofs and a few gaffes here on the Large Blast podcast, but if there's one thing we would never joke about, it's chaos abuse in our young people. Because when it comes to ritual chaos abuse, I think we can all agree, I'm not loving it.
Now I'd like to speak just to the kids for a moment.
That's right, Michael. Too many kids today are being driven to Slanesh by the saucy pictures they see on DeviantArt, or driven to the fury of Khorne by models like the Invader ATV. But with the help of listeners like you and a nourishing breakfast from McDonald's restaurant, we believe we can help put an end to ritual chaos abuse.
When I was 18, my future was just a dream.
And what do you think would have happened, Michael, if you'd taken even one toke of chaos?
That dream would have never come true.
So hopefully now, through the power of podcasting, we can present you with some testimonials that will help turn any young people thinking about dabbling in chaos away from the dark arts and back to the delicious tasting burgers from McDonald's restaurants.
That's what this program is all about. If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help. McDonald's wants you to give yourself a chance.
Thank you, Michael and McDonald's restaurants. And for the listeners at home, never forget, say get lost to chaos. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're looking to save some young people from the dangers of chaos this week on the Large Blast podcast. And we're going to give you some example stories of some numbskulls that had their lives all ahead of them before they fell off the cliff of chaos and ruined their lives, turned into twisted beasts. And where better to start than with the main man himself, the bloody bastard, Khan the Betrayer, the only Chaos Space Marine cool enough not to wear one armor of his power armor. Welshie, I believe you're going to do Khan the Betrayer, so do you want to fire up the chainsaw and tell us what is going on with this guy?
Well, it's a sad, sad tale of debauchery, of pain, of anger, and of just cutting off and collecting skulls. So young Khan, yeah, exactly. Young Khan was born on Terra and inducted into the Warhounds, and he showed great promise, more promise than any of the other Warhounds at the time. And by the time the Emperor had found his daddy, Big Angron, he was already a centurion. Everything was going very well for Khan. He loved to fight. He loved to take on the challenge in the fighting pits. He was unbested by anybody else. And that was when Khan's life, however, began to slip out of control, was when he first met his daddy. Not wanting to be rescued, his dad was very angry about being removed from his people and decided to kill most of the officers of the Warhounds upon first meeting them. The only officer of the Warhounds whom he didn't kill was Khan, who with balls the size of coconuts walked straight up to Angron and took an absolute pounding on the floor. Nice. Almost dead, broken, bleeding, crawling away, he got a real love for pain and the eightfold path. He only wanted pain and he only wanted revenge, not on his dad because he loved him so much despite the abuse, but on everybody else. So in order to impress his dad the most, he was the first person to inject himself with the butcher's nails. His dad had the butcher's nails, this weird, creepy chaos pain engine, filling him with only rage and removing any fear or knowledge of danger from his brain. And he demanded that any of his warhounds at the time, soon to become world eaters, if they wanted to continue serving the Legion, they must also adopt the butcher's nails. And Khan was the first to walk forward and have these screwed into his brain, and also one of very few to survive the initial attempts. So now, with pain flooding him, he absolutely loved it and could think of nothing but destruction, rendering, and anger. So that's kind of his downfall. And if you find Khan now, you'll realise that he's lost all sense of fear and danger. And he relies on his daddy's chain axe, Gorechild, which is teethed with mica dragon teeth, to murder. He even has a handy counter installed in his helm to help him keep track of the number of people he's killed, because he just loves murdering so much.
Is that like one of them thumb clickers?
It's like imagine a bouncer on the door of a club. He has one of those behind
Smashing
his
skulls.
eyepiece. Yeah,
nice.
just clicking through as he gets off on pure brutal murder. So at this point, he's fully surrendered to the Eightfold Path and become the champion of Khorne. And he can often be found roaming the streets, drinking blood from one of his many skulls, sometimes slumped in a corner after a real butchery fest.
Why
but
not?
His darkest moment earned him the moniker the Betrayer, where he was so high on drinking blood and lust and anger and death that he flamed his own warriors just because they couldn't beat the Emperor's children. just set them all on fire, and they all began beating the shit out of each other, and he was loving it. I believe he could have been seen drinking some blood and jerking off in the corner. There's even tales of him breaking entire Manufacturum planets by just feeding bodies into the grinding wheels until the grinding wheels stop grinding and just get clogged up with ancient blood. So that's the sad tale there of the young and promising Khan who got addicted to murder and bloodlust.
Man, I mean, it happens to the worst of us. But why were they fighting the Emperor's children?
So this is much later on. So when they're all falling out, obviously.
Oh, they're all like nutty
Khorne
chaos.
hates Slaanesh, and they've gone and fought. They can't get close enough to fight because the Emperor's children are blasting them with like sonic sound waves. Right. So they're just getting angrier and angrier.
I mean, getting really.
Khan just has enough and decides if they can't fight the Emperor's children, they'll all just fight each other.
So that's why he's called that, not to do with betraying the Emperor or anything like that.
No, it's for that, cool. Apparently. And there's also bits in the books where he kind of like Angron refers to him as it sometimes, just because Angron hates like everything. And I often feel sorry for Khan because there's these bits where he's like one of the last people with any in the Horus Heresy, in the World Eaters, with any sense of what's going on or like battlefield management or anything. Like his dad's just gone crazy. There's no battle plan. They all land and everyone just runs straight into traps. And Khan's like, what are you doing? And he it's just attrition in him. He just over and over again, he watches his legion not pay any attention to orders and get fucked up. And then he just loses it. He's just like, oh, well, sod it. And then he fights Sigismund in the Siege of Terror, and it doesn't go so well for him. But then he survives because he's Khan.
I didn't know he was born on Terror. And I thought, like, does that not make him the oldest person in 40k to have been born on Earth?
Araman was born on Terror.
Oh, okay.
More about him later.
Yeah, we'll hear about that in a bit. But do you think that maybe like in the World Eaters, they all just, because like you say, Angeron just like hated everybody. Do you think maybe they're all just called like Khan the Betrayer, Jeff the Tit, Joe the arsehole? Like, because,
There's a brilliant bit of him talking that I wrote down where he says he's describing the World Eaters and why they're necessary, because he's actually quite philosophical, where he's saying like, we need a legion that will just utterly destroy a planet whenever it's told to. But he says, we are not the tame, reliable pets that the Emperor wanted. The wolves obey where we would not, because their passions are not aflame with the butcher's nails buzzing. That is why we are the eaters of worlds and not the war hounds any longer. They're destructive and brutal like the space wolves, but they also don't do as they're told. They're like naughty dogs that are just not following commands. And most of the World Eaters are from Terror to start with, because they basically just turn up with the full army and drag Angron out of the gladiator pits.
Right.
And Angron hates it. That's why he's horrible, because he wants to stay with his people fighting.
Doesn't
in
the Emperor kill all the people?
Angron goes back later on and realizes that the revolution he led, he leads the gladiators. They're about to win the revolution, and then the Emperor comes down and takes him. And when he goes back, Lorgar takes him back, and the same people are in charge as when he was there, and he fully loses his shit and burns it to the ground. And that's when when Angron goes full red mode, Red Hulk. Yeah.
Red Hulk. Yeah.
So yeah, that's calm.
If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
Cool. Well, next up, I want to talk to you all about a very sad tale. A story about a man that had so much of his life stretching before him. A good-looking man, a man with talent and charisma and charm, but who became twisted by the treacherous hand of Lady Chaos. And that, of course, is Lucius the Eternal. He started off as a truly handsome man. He was known for being a good-looking chap amongst the Emperor's children. In fact, lots of people mocked him for being too pretty by his fellow Marines. But that all changed after he got into a sparring match with Loken of the Lunar Wolves, and he broke his nose with a devastating punch, which he tried to get fixed up with all the apothecaries and everything, but he always had a bit of a nick, a bit of a bend in it, which used to drive him wild, even though everybody else could say they couldn't notice it. He was still a big, sexy bastard. Sometime before the Istvan III disaster, Lucius received a pair of scars across his cheeks from the remembrancer Cinera de Angelos, an artist on the 28th expedition who had already fallen to chaos, and this was done to remind him of Loken's insult to his perfection. He subsequently marked himself with more scars to commemorate his victories, eventually creating an intricate network of scars, distorting and deforming his features, which I'm going to point out right now is a red flag for any parents out there. If your kid is going to become chaosy, you want to look out for things like scarring, spikes, stuff like that.
Eyeliner, I think at the lots end of eyeliner.
One of the things that about Lucius is that he never would fire guns. All he ever did was have swords. He bore his battle scars with pride after a while and began to equate pain with success. And that was when he really sucked on the crack pipe of Slanesh and flipped to chaos along with his Primarch Fulgrim. After the change, Lucius became known as Lucius the Eternal, or Soul Thief, Fulgrim's champion, or the Blade of Eons. Lucius continued to distinguish himself to the Primarch Fulgrim as they descended further into chaos worship. He fought with incredible speed and skill in the gladiatorial battles that Fulgrim put on whilst they travelled from world to world. People thought that Lucius was invincible and that no one could best him, until one day he was finally killed by the infamous Lord Commander Cyrus. Do you guys know anything about Commander Cyrus? I've never heard of him.
No. What's he from?
Well, you're going to find out now. Because Slanesh was gutted to see his new toy Lucius go so easily. So over the next few weeks, the artificer armor that Commander Cyrus wore began to warp and change. Cyrus's hair fell out in clumps and dark lines appeared under his flesh, slowly pushing through his skin in a maze of scar tissue. Soon, Lucius has emerged completely, and all that remained of Cyrus was a screaming, withered face, submerged entirely into Lucius's armor. Now Lucius stalks the galaxy, an arrogant slaughterer who can never truly be killed, his armor covered with the screaming faces of those that had once thought they had destroyed him. He leads his debauched warband of Emperor's children with total confidence, welcoming death with as much passion as he inflicts it upon his foes. So yeah, there you have it. What dirty Lucius, the Eternal. You can't beat him. If you do, before you know it, boom.
Yeah,
your tracksuit's going to turn it. You're going to be your tracksuit, and Lucius is going to be rocking your Nike Air Max or whatever you've got going on.
What an amazing character trait! Like, how come this guy isn't leading the forces of chaos? Like, he's basically indestructible. How can you kill him?
Arrogant and just like he
too arrogant.
Sort of has his own agendas. He doesn't really like do anything except for fly around. Like, there's a really cool story about him. He's got this like combat stim pack thing on his back that's a bit like one of the things that a Dark Eldar has, and he got that from fighting in the gladiatorial pits in Camorra. He flew to just fancied like going to Camorra to do some more gladiatorial shit, and just flew there and like fought in their gladiatorial arena until he won and got this cool thing for injecting him with drugs.
He's really I love him in the books and the novels. He's like the full Narcissus. He's just like catches himself in the mirror and thinks how beautiful he looks, and and
he's
how
full-on
he
Patrick
can't get
Bateman.
bested. He is the full Bateman. You're right. Yeah, he's there in white pants with a chainsaw, I'm sure, at some point. The model,
I was just gonna say,
the faces on the model are so old school 90s grimdark, and that model is going to be amazing when it gets redone. I hope.
Hell
yeah.
I hope it's not super cartoony and is still horrible and done really well. It's going to be great.
I do also wonder whether Lucius the Eternal is a reference to the Lucius Trust, which is a library of occult books and things like that, which was known as Lucifer's Publications, and was this place where you could go and read up on evil magic, which kind of is something which is known to have twisted many a person over the years and remains on long after those people die.
Yeah, looking forward to him getting a new model.
Like you say, Matt, he should have a 30k model as well.
Yeah,
like there's Eidolon, isn't there? But there's no Lucius.
Yeah,
wasn't he an amazing swordsman as well?
Yeah, that's his whole thing. Is he's like the best swordsman? Yeah.
But he's not, because he gets beaten. Like he gets beaten by this Cyrus guy, obviously, and he also gets bested by Nikona Sharakin, who fights with like 2 shadow blades from the Raven Guard. Beats him as well, so he does get beaten.
Cool. You're not that good.
If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
Up next, I'm going to tell you about Jago Sevatarion, aka Sevatar, the Prince of Crows, an Ostrama native and senior advisor to the Primarch Konrad Kurz. As a child, he began to display psychic powers, and he struggled to listen to people and understand their points of view. He became quite arrogant, very arrogant. His mother, she told him that he would grow out of it and he needn't worry, but he didn't grow out of it. He was very arrogant and he just got more and more arrogant. He eventually found his way into the Legion of Konrad Kurz, and although known to the Primarch Konrad Kurz, he suppressed his psychic powers. He hid them. And this also, I've found, and I think we'll find tonight, tends to lead down a dangerous path when you knowingly suppress your psychic powers, or even have psychic powers. You're already struggling to fight the forces of chaos. Don't hide your powers. If you have them, don't hide them.
Time to come out of the powers closet, people. Out and proud with powers.
And his powers in his time in the Legion, his powers could give him little improvements, such as like running a little bit faster, appearing a little bit more scarier, quite convenient in his Legion. He is only warrior amongst the Legiones Astartes to fight Sigismund, the Templar, to a draw in 1-to-1 combat. In 100 years, Sigismund had always won. And in 30 hours of 1-to-1 combat, Sevatar fought Sigismund to a draw. Do you know how he did it? He cheated. That's how he did it. Sigismund came in for the final blow and Sevatar headbutted him. An illegal move. Sigismund, he laughed it off. Apparently he was laughing the whole time, you know. A great man at himself, a real knight, wouldn't succumb to this sort of arrogance. He's a humble man. But Sevatar cheated. He got the draw. He walked away having not lost. So that kind of built up his ego. Eventually, he became the leader of the first company. He kind of managed his appearance to become more and more frightening to his enemies. So he started to drape skin over his armor. This is a loyalist legion. So like we said about eating raw meat and Khan drinking blood, this guy is playing around with biological human bits and pieces, and spreading skin on your armor is never a good sign. So don't spread skin on your armor. So eventually, inevitably, he falls to chaos. All the anger built up, and then quite quickly, quite suddenly, he hated all his fellow Space Marines. From my research, it was never quite clear why this happened so quickly, but it did. And he, before the Istvan drop site massacre, so this is pre-heresy really happening, became the first person to utter the phrase, "Death to the false emperor, which is a rallying cry heard across the galaxy for the next 10,000 years. And this is the first person to say these words. So this is another thing. If you don't want to fall to chaos, don't say death to the false emperor. If you don't say that, you're probably going to be okay. It's never really clear. Nobody even really knows if he dies, but it hasn't really been in the storyline yet. Is he dead? Is he alive? Is he still a prisoner of the Dark Angels? There's some interesting rumors that he actually became one of the 8 of the first Grey Knights. Which,
no.
Yeah,
I don't believe that.
When I heard that, I thought, no way. This is absolutely bananas. But
if you don't want to fall to chaos, don't listen to these false rumors.
And anyway, the rumor is something to do with people text that's written on a statue of one of the 8 original Grey Knights, and it's all very far-fetched. But the ending of the story is that there is no ending because his death is not recorded. So
there you go, still out there.
So
lost and alone on the streets somewhere with a skin full of chaos. Yeah,
probably.
Literally.
But
I
think
carry a bag next to him. Like, yeah.
If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
The 70s, the 80s,
the 90s.
Oh, we're going back in time. Is that a space squad? It's time we take you back with a blast from the past.
So all this playing around with Bane Blades for my Armies on Parade board reminded me of something really special. Did you guys know that Games Workshop built a 1/6 scale remote control Bane Blade?
What? So that's mental. So Matt's got a picture of this up here, and we're looking at a guy that looks like Ed Sheeran sat in front of what looks like the best made battle bot or Robot Wars bot.
Robot Wars, yeah.
That you've ever seen. It's fucking huge. What the fuck is this? This is just a Beyblade for your action men.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's the right kind of scale. There is actually an Imperial Guard commander on the tank. Can you see just next to his elbow?
There's a big nose, like an action man size.
That is like an action man size, yeah. So I don't actually think that Games Workshop made this, but I always remembered it from a White Dwarf. And if you want to look it up, you can find it online. It's in White Dwarf 308. You need to go to page 21. It's a summary of the 2004 Games Day, where basically it's like roving reporter and they're writing about everything that's going on. And this Baneblade was one of the things that was at the Games Day in 2004. I don't think actually Games Workshop built it. I think some fans built it.
It says here that it was built in Volgograd in Russia. Built by some crazy Russians.
It says it took 12 months to build in Volgograd, aka Stalingrad, which seems like the most appropriate place to build a super heavy 40k tank.
It's probably made out of bits of old tank and powered by some kind of old nuclear generator stuffed up inside there or something. Well, it looks like it certainly is.
Weighs 230 kilograms and it has enough power to pull the transit van. So it's not fucking around. There's a video on YouTube.
Yeah, this is basically a child-sized tank. Yeah. If you were a small child, you could ride around in this and cause warfare on other small children quite happily.
Yeah. And yeah, it says the turrets move around and there's like sound effects. And when the main battle cannon fires,
the battle cannon fucking fires. You didn't mention that.
I think it's just like a noise effect. I don't think it fires a shell.
Right.
It's big. It's big enough that if you have enough money, you probably could make that into a firing gun.
Put a potato gun in there or something.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the Games Workshop article this week about the Games Cafe in Thailand?
Yes!
In the middle of Thailand,
it's
where
insane.
they built a Imperial Knight outside out of scrap parts, where each of the shoulders was half a car. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, go on warhammercommunity.com and you'll find the article. And they have a life-size Outrider bike that you can sit on, and a Trigon, like an animatronic Trigon bursting through the wall of the shop, with a little remote control that you can like move it around. On the off chance any guys who live in Thailand are listening to the show, contact us because I'd love to talk to you guys about those projects. They're crazy.
All I kept thinking about though when I was looking at that was like, I can't imagine like the summer heat, like the wet summer heat playing in that Games Workshop shop.
The people that run that place are pretty handy. They could install an air conditioning unit if they could build a fucking Titan. Word up, my young dudes. Stony here again with another rad special guest.
We're Everclear.
The band Everclear, that's pretty dope. But you know what's not dope? Ritual chaos abuse in our young people.
Never talk about the damage it's going to do to you physically and mentally.
That's right, Everclear. Chaos sure is whack. In fact, I heard that Slanesh even gave you an unending butthole that you've yet to find the bottom of.
I threw away 14 years of my life.
Well, I hope you get there one day, brother. But until then, if you don't want to end up like the band Everclear, stay away from ritual chaos abuse.
Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody. Figure it out for yourself.
So welcome back, everybody. You've rejoined us for another Keep Kids Off Chaos campaign here at the Large Blast podcast, where we hope to keep at least one kid away from the dastardly hands of chaos. And we've got coming up next the man that started it all, the man that kicked it all off, Erebus. Welshie, could you tell us a little something about this sad tale?
I certainly can. So, listeners, unlike some of the other unfortunate stories that we've heard here this evening, where people were tricked or fell to chaos for no other option, Erebus realised from an early age that he was already a cunt. And this is his story. Born to common folk on Colchis, he always enjoyed being a devious little scamp, and even killed the local pride of his village to take their place and join the local priesthood. Boys will be boys, eh? But it was here in the priesthood that he really got into the hardcore Class A shit. Books. Once you start getting into books with a little bit of chaos in, you just can't stop. Moorish books. After reading one too many of these tomes, he had a bad trip in the mirror and saw his face split into 4 facets of the ruinous powers. It was then that his life started spiraling, though spiraling very much in his control. Realizing that he was utterly addicted to the joy of being a true dickhead, he not only began to deceive his Primarch, but set in motion the sequence of events that would destroy the whole galaxy by healing Horus in the Serpent Lodge in Davin. That was, of course, after he provided the anatheme to the man that would cut Horus with it and give him the wound in the first place. It's this kind of trickery that leads Erebus down his dark, dark path. But it's not, again, by accident. It's purely by choice. Now he sits in the Eye of Terror, in a circle jerk, endlessly having to wash stained robes of the Dark Council of Sicarus, measuring his dick against the other renowned word-bearer, Bad Boy Corferon. Though sometimes he does get to pop out for the odd ritual sacrifice or Black Crusade.
Oh, what a prick.
So this little scallywag, he was a bad apple from the very fucking beginning, wasn't he? I mean,
there's no fall into chaos for him.
Yeah, he was there from the beginning. What a little arsehole. There's
one bit that I didn't mention in there where he does get a little bit of a comeuppance, old Erebus. I say a little bit, it's quite a lot of a comeuppance. His ego gets a little bit too big for his boots, and he blames Horus for something going wrong. He basically says, I told you should have let me go after Sanguinius so he couldn't get to Terra. And Horus is like, I don't take orders from you, dickhead, and finally snaps and flays the skin off Erebus's face with his own anatheme. Which is pretty cool. And the tattoos on his face.
I was going to ask.
I was looking into these. When he kills the local lad in his village, so there's a lad in his village that's like the aspiring guy, like he's got the best sats in year 6, you know, and he goes after him and kills him and basically tattoos his tattoos on his face so he can get away with being him and just pretends to be him, just takes his place.
So it's like
so he copies as well, the biggest crime of all.
Exactly.
Passport identity theft.
That's it. He's like the word bearers. I've said a few episodes ago that reading Betrayer and the First Heretic, you really get to learn more about the word bearers' lore, and it's really cool. They basically, their home planet already followed chaos. Like there's always hints, there's always tribes when they land on new planets where they're kind of following chaos. The like written rules was chaos, and they all kind of grew up basically when they joined a priesthood. It was kind of chaos, And then Lorgar arrives, and they all go. Lorgar convinces them all to try and worship the Emperor as a god.
Oh, I see.
And Erebus and Corferon are like having none of it, and they stick with Chaos the whole time. And then the Emperor comes and basically tells Lorgar off in front of his entire legion for calling him a god. And then Lorgar's like, oh, well, maybe I should listen to old Erebus and Corferon then. And that's what starts the whole goddamn spiral off. So he really is the linchpin of everything.
Does the Emperor, so that we all know that the Emperor's got a pretty good idea of what chaos is before everybody else does, and all the ruinous powers and all that kind of stuff. So, like, does he not come down to this planet where there's people like Erebus and that, like, worshipping chaos and go, like, you know what? Maybe this should be one of the retracted ones. I'm going to get rid of these guys,
But he comes quite late, like, after Lorgar's gone and kind of tidied it up a bit. So they're not, like, summoning demons there,
right.
But they've got, like, the text and they're investigating it and they're writing it down. They're more studying it, like RS in school, rather than, like, going to church.
I mean, what does the Emperor not have a look around? Like, does he just come and he just like he does the tour that they show him? He doesn't like have a look behind some of the doors or anything, or like like be like, oh, what's this demon book doing on the shelf here?
Well, the first time the Emperor goes anywhere near there is to with Gilliman to destroy an entire planet that Lorgar has put together that's functioning very, very well, but worships the word of Lorgar and kind of the Emperor as a god, not as he's worshipped as a god in 40k, but kind of like deifies him. But it's he really is just a dick, Erebus. He's clever. He's a full-on psychopath. All of the other bit, like, he sets up. He's the first person that goes and finds Typhus, who we'll hear about. And is the kind of seed for all of the lodges that are kind of set in place. He's pulling the strings the whole time.
I think this it can kind of lead credence to the idea that maybe the Emperor, maybe it's all part of a grand plan in some form, because you do wonder, like, how would he not?
Well, who knows? I mean, we talked about the idea of maybe the Emperor is just a dude. A dude with lots of power, and maybe he really was just like, oh shit, I forgot to do something about the fucking word bearers.
Oh fuck.
But his thing is just the Emperor's way of dealing with the word bearers is telling them to stop. Like, stop. No one's allowed religion, everything's science. But obviously there's always going to be some underground guy in a robe.
It does make you wonder, like, what was going on with those two retracted ones? Did he come down and the Primarch was just like 69 in a cow or something? And he was just like, right, I'm off, fuck it, this guy's out.
If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
Do either of you know what Typhus's nickname is?
It's like the Hive. It's the Hive something. He has like plague of flies inside his belly.
No, he is. It's Typhus the Herald of Nurgle, but his nickname is Typhus the Traveller. He's called that now, but his original name was Callus Typhon, and he was born on the world of Barbarous. Before even Mortarion came and freed the peoples of Barbarous, it was governed by mutant psychers, one of whom was forced himself onto Typhon's mother, and 9 months later, an outcast was born, Typhon, shunned by his neighbors because his mother gave birth to this half-mutant. His mother was killed by the villagers. He then grew up as an outcast because of his psychic powers and because of who he was. So he was outcast from birth. And as he grew up, he became aware of these psychic powers because plants, for example, used to wither and die if he looked at them, which is also not a good sign. So this guy is growing up and there's already some sort of chaotic influence on his life. These beings that controlled Barbarous were destroyed by Mortarion, but there's many conspiracies and rumors as to what they were. They're definitely some form of psyker, because they are rumors that these people that governed Barbarous might not have actually have been human, which is quite an interesting conspiracy considering what he becomes. He also does not remember how he joined the Death Guard. So he doesn't remember the process of becoming a Space Marine, and that kind of lends argument as to not actually being processed in the usual way. Because when you join to become a Space Marine, there's lots of biological checks that you have to go through, and maybe none of that happened. Who knows? But either way, he as well had to hide his psychic powers, which, as I said earlier, I think is a real trait of some of these characters. So he hides his psychic powers, especially once he's in the Legion. So he's in the Legion, and he begins to learn about Mortarion and know Mortarion, and he knows how Mortarion hates psychers. So he's hiding almost on pain of death his psychic ability. Without using them, he rises through the ranks, eventually to become, needless to say, the first captain of the Death Guard. So the esteemed rank that leads to damnation, and it certainly will in this case. But although he is remembered for doing some good deeds, he saved a unit of Sisters of Silence by throwing himself on a crack grenade that was malfunctioning. And he was so determined to get back to the battlefront that he only spent a week in the hospital, and then he was back at the front line. And for reasons like that, the warriors of the Death Guard respected Typhon, and they obeyed Typhon, but they also obeyed him with as well as respect, also fear, because of the psychic powers. And through various means, he ends up becoming entangled with Nurgle. He starts to not hate, but he starts to kind of fall out of love with Mortarion. Maybe also because of the psychic powers, because Mortarion hates psychers. Like, he really hates psychers. We've had the episode about the Edict of Nicaea, and Mortarion is one of the people that really advocates for the banning of the Librarius project. Eventually, Typhus creates an opportunity where he can start to use his psychic powers. He suggests to Mortarion that the navigators are all conspiring with Malgador the Sigillite, and he suggests this to Mortarion, but he's already killed them all, and they can't go anywhere because all the navigators are dead. So he says to Mortarion, basically, if we're going to go into warp space, you should allow me to use my psychic powers, and here are all my friends who are also psychers, and we'll take the Legion to where we need to go next through the warp. And Mortarion eventually allows him to do that.
It's a mucusy mutiny, isn't it? That's what it is. It's a full-on mutiny that leaves them stranded in the warp.
Yeah, well, they go into the warp. Yeah, so the mutiny against Mortarion, essentially, and they get stuck, but it's all a trick of Nurgle to send them to a place in the warp where they all get infested with Nurgle's rot, and the whole Legion is damned for all time. And of course, Typhon is blessed by this offering to Nurgle, and he then essentially ceases to exist. And Typhus is born. So Typhus, his armor fills with plague and pus and flies, and this blessing, while everyone else is in pain because they can't die because they're superhuman Space Marines, and they've got Nurgle's rot going through their blood and veins. Typhus is created, becomes a herald of Nurgle, and through various other things in the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy is crushed, as we know, and Mortarion runs off to the Eye of Terror and creates a demon world in the image of Barbarus. And this disgusts Typhus, because Typhus sees this as sentimentality. Barbarus is dead. Why would you recreate Barbarus? I want to go and conquer the galaxy. So Mortarion sits on his throne on this planet that is a copy of Barbarus, and Typhus is like, no, I want to travel the galaxy. I want to conquer the galaxy. And that's why he's called Typhus the Traveler.
Because he has to go far to conquer the galaxy.
Keep floating.
Yeah.
Well, he's got a special spaceship, doesn't he, that he flies around in, that's just full of flies.
Well, he has the Terminus Est, which is a massive ancient pre-heresy battleship. Yeah, and it is. Yeah, it's like it's disgustingly resilient. he has a funny relationship with his Primarch, but he has fought alongside him. But I was going to say, I mean, surely Typhus is kind of the second in command of Chaos at the moment in 40k. Would you disagree with that?
I think I agree. What
After
you mean?
He's
He's
like the
most out
the
there,
second
most
man.
recognizable.
Yeah.
We had the Death Guard versus Ultramarine box set, and he's the only one. We're looking at the range here. He's the only one who's had 3 models of any of. Oh no, Araman has 2. But he's had a good few.
He's had a
models.
lot of love over the years.
He's
also one of the first captains that kind of accepted Chaos quite gladly. He wasn't tricked or anything. He was just kind of like, all right, cool, yeah, I'll be Chaos now.
Because Mortarion hated it. Like, he did it because he actually loved his sons and wanted to save them, and it was the only option to save them after Typhus just left him stranded, which is why they fall out. They're in the Siege of Terror book now, where Mortarion's not even letting him fight. He's just sent him off to the other side of the planet. He's like, I don't even want to fight with you. Go over there and do something else, Typhus.
Typhus kind of is the kind of one that damns the Legion. But that happens a few times, like we said about Erebus. It's like the second in command. I also realized that it's, in a way, it's interesting how now in 40k, even now in 40k, the lieutenants, and by that I mean like the second in command, are the ones that are leading the forces of chaos. Whereas the Primarchs, even the demon Primarchs, they're kind of small gods, but they're not really like leading.
I was just going to say the thing I love about Typhus and Mortarion and the Death Shroud, all of the big Death Guard characters, is that their weapons are sized, because Barbarous was like a farming planet. They were all farmers.
Yeah.
They literally just scythed wheat, so their weapons are power scythes. I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that that's a thing.
Exactly. And I mean, it's a cool weapon, don't get me wrong, but I cannot imagine that being a very wieldy thing to have in fucking combat. If you're fighting grass, scythe every day of the week, but fighting
Don't forget, so Typhus's Man Reaper has been dipped into. He's been honoured with the blessing of going to the Garden of Nurgle after he's defended it against the demons of Khorne, and he was honoured to bow before Nurgle itself and dip the Man Reaper in the pool of pus.
And he has the Devastator hive. Oh. That's what I was thinking about. It doesn't like he releases the flies from his belly.
The thing on the back.
The Devastator hive.
It'd be a miss to not mention the original Typhus model, which I always thought was excellent.
Yeah.
Our fellow Nurgle player Alex assures me that it looks small and silly now compared to the new sculpts, which I imagine it probably does. I think it's a shame, because the first model is a lot better than the newer one.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I do. Yeah, I think the old one's cool. I really like the Forge World model as well, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really good, isn't it?
If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
All right, welcome back. I'm going to talk now about a little person you might have heard of called Ahriman. And now this guy, he is well known to us now as the Sorcerer of Teach, the mighty Sorcerer of Chaos, up to many mischiefs around the galaxy. But he didn't start off that way. Oh, no, sirree. He was born on Terra, much like Khan, to a bunch of rich people and kings and that, basically, that sat around and did fuck all for ages until the Emperor came and joined them long after the Unification Wars and stuff. So everybody thought they were kind of like Ponzi bastards, basically, because they just, as soon as all the hard shit was done, they just joined the Emperor, showed up with a bunch of money and snazzy robes on and that. So everyone was like, oh, who's these knobheads? But no, Ahriman, and he had a twin brother called Orosmund, were selected to be Astartes, and they were taken on board, and they flew around the galaxy with the Emperor, doing many things to do with the Great Crusades. They were all involved in the Great Crusades, and everything was going great until the Thousand Sons started to develop psychic abilities. And this was all well and good, but they also started to get weird mutations, bits hanging off them where they shouldn't be hanging off them, bits dropping off that shouldn't be dropping off, all kinds of nastiness. And everyone was like, this is heresy. You can't have these boys on. They're up to no good. We've got to get rid of them. And just when things were looking like the Thousand Sons were going to be destroyed, Ahriman was at his lowest point. His twin brother died due to mutations. Heart exploded, crumpled in on itself because it grew a hand on it or something weird like that. So Osmond died, and Aramon's at his wit's end, doesn't know what to do. But then they stumble across Prospero, and of course they find Magnus the Red there, and he uses his he goes into the warp and uses his psychic spells to do some magical psychic shit that he concentrates so hard on his eye pops out, and he manages to save and stabilize the Legion, so none of them are mutated anymore thanks to some kind of magic power that Magnus has done. And Aramon is amazed. This is the one thing that he's always wanted. If only his brother could have been alive to see this. He gives everything to Magnus at this point. But Aramon could never completely get rid of his distrust of Magnus, and always wanted to know as much. Anytime he felt like there was some information being kept from him, it drove him up the wall. Basically, he always wanted to know as much as possible. And when Magnus disappeared after they brought an industrial planet into compliance with the help of the Space Wolves, Aramon made a direct order to leave him alone and shot out to try to find him, basically, because he thought he was keeping some kind of secret knowledge from him, which is the first signs that maybe Aramon didn't completely trust Magnus the Red. He also shares deeply secret information about the Thousand Suns psychics practices with the Space Wolf rune priest known as Wormdrake. He did this because he thought that he was sharing secrets with a fellow psyker, but that piece of shit, Wormdrake, ended up grassing him up to the Council of Nicaea and ended up being part of the evidence used to get psychic powers forbidden. Aramon described the Council of Nicaea as the trial of the Thousand Suns and made him even more distrustful of the Emperor and Magnus in particular. Around this time, the mutations started to return to the Legion, and Leman Russ was charged with executing the mutated sons. This hurt Aramon deeply, as Magnus had said the mutations would never return. Already feeling betrayed, he then found out that Magnus knew about chaos and had probably done some kind of deal with the ruinous powers to save them from mutation in the first place. Magnus had hidden as much from his children as the Emperor had hidden from him, and Aramon lost even more faith in the Primarch. Magnus even tried to use his psychic powers to remove this knowledge from Aramon's mind, wiping it out and hiding knowledge from him further. Despite the Council of Nicaea, Aramon went along with Magnus's decision to keep doing psychic shit and warp study on the lowdown. They foresaw elements of the heresy and Horus's downfall. Magnus used the warp then to try to gain entry to Terra and tell the Emperor of what was going on, eventually fucking up a load of psychic wards and letting a bunch of chaos in. The Emperor got really pissed off and sent Leman Russ out to go and to bring Magnus to heel, but Leman Russ gets convinced to kill him. I'm sure we all know this part. Magnus knows this and feels guilty, decides to accept his fate. He puts up the psychic barriers to stop the Suns from knowing anything is going on. Magnus urges Aramon to do the same. Just lay down and accept the fate. But Aramon refuses to sit by, passively wait to die, and goes out to fight with his people for his home. Eventually, Magnus agrees to rumble with Aramon and the boys. But before he does, he gives Aramon the Book of Magnus, a book said to hold every spell that Magnus knows. Leman Russ and Magnus fight. Eventually, Magnus loses, and the Suns retreat into a fiery portal for the warp. So after being exiled to the Eye of Terror with the other Suns, Aramon began to hate Magnus as the mutations began to run rampant through the Legion once again, and seemingly unchecked, and the Legion now seemed to accept it and not even try to fight against it. Aramon set out to cure this flesh change by himself. Foolishly, he started to look through Magnus's spell book to see if he could find the answer. That was a book of change, and there was no magic in there that would help him. After doing some spells he mixed with his hatred of Magnus, he found that the spell called Rubric was working, but it wasn't powerful enough to him to cast for great effect on his own. So he gathered the remaining lads together for them all to cast it. The spell effect ended up saving 100 of the Legionnaire's most powerful sorcerers. The rest turned to dust, sealed in their armor forever. In the aftermath of the cataclysm, it became clear that the rubric had either been a success beyond all possible expectations or an abominable failure, depending on how you looked at it. Aramon himself, along with most of his cabal, were horrified with the result. Although the Legion had no longer worry about the flesh change, they were now all basically just heavily armored dust bags. Magnus was pissed off and tried to kill Ahriman, but Teach put a stop to that, and Ahriman was banished from the planet of sorcerers. Ahriman now basically spends his time gathering knowledge and looking for a cure for the mutation of the Legion. He keeps trying to get into the Black Library, and he pops up here and there or anywhere where there's a large collection of book or knowledge. It truly is a tragic, tragic tale.
Those Class A books again, him and Erebus snorting the old book. It's another one, isn't it, where the Primarch doesn't react in a way that he thinks he should, and he ends up doing something that just gets him cast aside.
Yeah. Do you not think though that's they're already on the path of damnation prior to that point?
Well, it seems it's like this kind of there's sort of a chain of hidden knowledge that kind of ends up ruining everybody, because it's like the Emperor knows the hidden knowledge, and then the Primarchs kind of suspect the hidden knowledge and try to find it out, and then the first in command suspect the Primarchs of the Emperor's hidden knowledge, and they all try to so they're all one step behind each other.
Yeah, Magnus is a real dick in that bit where he's like, I'm going to give up, so you're all giving up too, because I'm not going to tell you anyone's even coming.
Yeah. No, Magnus spends a lot of time sniffing his own farts, which is a bit of a shame, really, because Ahriman does sort of start as kind of a sad character, really. He's just, all he really wants is to just stay human. That's his kind of main goal. Yeah. And, in a way, there's kind of all these lofty ideals for them by there being 1,000 suns and having these kind of psychic powers and things like that.
You do think in another classic Emperor gone and fucked up, how did he not know making an entire legion of psychers was going to lead to some shenanigans?
Yeah.
Why would you bother? And then not really tell them what psychers
that are literally mutating and falling apart until you to the point where you have to do a deal with chaos to keep them just glued together long enough to get them into battle.
Yeah. I mean, the namesake, I don't know if you guys know, but where Ahriman comes from in real life is the god of evil and chaos from Zoroastrianism. So Ahriman literally is god of chaos.
That's not exactly true, Welshie. Let me tell you a little bit about Zoroastrianism.
Forbidden knowledge. Ancient secrets.
It's Stoney's esoteric bullshit section.
Wow, I can't believe
so boring. Okay, so Zarathustra was a prophet who formed Zoroastrianism, and there were lots of things that we would recognize as religious about it today. Zoroastrianism also relied really heavily on magic in a number of ways, and it broke its magic into two schools: sorcery, which is kind of selfish and bad, and magic, which is intended to help the world. This kind of splitting of good and bad magic is quite kind of Council of Nicaea. Zoroastrian magic is called Mazdan magic. It's a magical practice which mixes spiritual ritual with classic David Blaine-style tricks and feats performed by magi, which is where the term magic comes from. They saw these kind of tricks as thought exercises and a way of bridging the gap between the physical and the spiritual worlds in the minds of the populace. They knew the importance of pizzazz. They had this religion that they'd just made and they were trying to sell, and they knew that they had to get out there and try to make people interested. So they did things like fire breathing and snake charming and magic tricks and all that kind of stuff. Zarathustra taught not dwelling on the past or holding on to a mythical golden age, but rather a constant change and progress was the only way for man to reach its true spiritual potential, and that magic was the only way to bring change. Zarathustra thought that his followers had a moral responsibility to protect the physical world from spiritual evil through the use of magic. And he says that in the hands of the unwise man, magic devolves into sorcery, which again is a bit like what happened to Magnus. He didn't know what he was doing, and he ended up becoming the greatest sorcerer in Teach's army. Zarathustra said that it was evil thought and evil word that bred evil deed, and taught that pure spirit would be the best way to shield against these forces. But as violence was seen more of a natural inevitability by spiritualists at the time, a lot of people thought Zarathustra was blind to the violent nature of the gods. Zarathustra also communicated with old spirits ritually, but never really believed in them to be powerful or exist in our world. He didn't think of them as sentient, and other magi thought that he was reckless with the old gods' attention. But he did believe that although the other gods existed, there was one true God, the god of the sun, the god of light, Ahura Mazda, who was the only god who had any real power in this world. The others had to find sneaky and cerebral ways to interact with humans. But Ahura Mazda had all the answers and wanted to evolve man if you could reach him through magic and spiritual practice. Zarathustra also knew that he was selling a new religion and that every good hero needed a villain. So he gave each of his gods a counterpart. And Ahriman is the reverse of Ahura Mazda. He is known as the god of the black sun, which is meant to represent forbidden knowledge. The term black sun means something that gives light to a dark thing that is best left unknown. Ahriman also represents truth, but it's an unknowable truth that is dangerous to those that use it. Zarathustra believed that someone was only truly human if they cultivated their mind, but only with the right kind of information. And Ahriman represents dark knowledge that would bring unbearable truth and cause madness and doubt. He can also represent change and evolution and is known as the Lord of Change. Another thing that's interesting in terms of 40k is that Ahura Mazda and Ahriman both have offspring. Ahura Mazda's son is fire. Despite being devastating and all-consuming, fire is everlasting gateway to the land of the gods and holds the power of spiritual change. Much like the burning of Prospero brought the disturbing hidden truth to the thousand suns before whisking them away in a fiery portal of dark flames. Ahriman's son is called Zohek, which is a rearranging of Arzek, which is Ahriman's first name in 40k.
Oh, nice.
And is known as the inner fire, which is the thing that keeps us alive after we are gone. Zoroastrians also believe that the physical body is possessed by demons after death, when our soul is no longer there to tend on this inner flame. So if we're looking at the Horus heresy with the knowledge of what the law is alluding to, maybe it can tell us some different things. Ahriman is constantly trying to cling to some humanity, not wanting to become a mutant or a powerful demon prince or a psychic god. Maybe he represents mankind's unreadiness to ascend to lofty heights Magnus and Chaos had in mind for him. And when Magnus wanted to use the warp to further mankind, it was enough for Ahriman just to keep him human. Or maybe he represents man's inability not to investigate every dark corner available to them, to build every bomb and poke every corpse just because we know we can. It was simply the knowledge of a dark secret existing that was enough to seal Ahriman's fate. Any new and interesting information is irresistible, no matter how grisly. Maybe this is the thing that Zarathustra was also alluding to. When we have all the resources in the world, why would we want to make high-tech weapons instead of high-tech social care? Because we have the knowledge of humanity's dark side, and it scares us all-consumingly, holding us back with fear and hate, like the mankind depicted in 40k. So I think whatever it is, it's clear that this is a reference to Mazdan magic in 40k, and I think that understanding that helps enrich the lore.
I agree. Very well researched there, Stoney.
Yeah.
Also, the birds, right? What you were saying about the Zoroastrians thinking the bodies, as soon as they're empty, will be filled with demons. That's why they did sky burials, didn't they? So the symbol of the vulture, birds. That's like the Lord of Change, and they all have vulture skulls.
Right. Well, there's a link other there random. As well. Some of their other gods have names that are from Teach as well. Like there's a guy called Fate Weaver, who was like an old god that Zarathustra repurposed. He was like the god of riot or something like that, and he repurposed him as a Fate Weaver or something.
Yeah, it's cool because I think most people look at the Thousand Sons and think they're Egyptian, which you can see why they might think that, but it's definitely. Well,
but a lot of Zarathustrian imagery is Egyptian. It's got a lot of those birds with like those kind of scaraby type beetles with the wings on,
the double wings with the blue and the yellow.
Yeah, and sphinxes they use a lot. So yeah, I can see, so it that all kind of syncs up as well with all of this Mazdan stuff.
LBP, come for the Warhammer, stay for the history.
If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
All right, guys. Well, so that's it. We've seen some devastating cases of chaos abuse here. What do we think as a roundup? What can we do to try to avoid chaos abuse? Could any of these guys have been saved, or was their fates all inevitable? Because I think that a couple of these guys, if maybe they'd been in different legions or something like that, maybe they would have been all right.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think so. I think
no, you think they all would have
was always a cunt. Sevatar was always a knob.
Actually, yeah. What am I saying? Yeah, no, they're
Typhus.
screwed from the beginning.
Typhus
Yeah,
was
that's
screwed
true.
from birth.
that half of them grew up on chaos planets. They were fucked from the beginning.
Yeah.
Don't grow up on a chaos planet. Don't become the first captain. Don't hide your psychic powers.
What about Khan? Do you think he could have been saved?
Yes, maybe. I think Khan, with the right Primarch and the right
Yeah,
love, would have been
But
fine.
he drank blood. Don't drink blood. Don't put skin on your armor.
But he's only doing that after the nails. Like
Yeah,
chaos
okay.
corrupting his
Don't-
mind. If he hadn't got the butcher's
don't
nails,
do
he
the
could have been
nails, yeah.
Sigismund.
So that's we spoke about daddy love. It's kind of like don't love your daddy too much. Don't follow them. Don't listen to him if he tells you to jump off a cliff. Don't jump.
Yeah, and don't do anything for him. Just because you think he needs saving, he probably
Yeah.
doesn't.
Don't join a lodge or a cult
Yeah, cults are a swift path to chaos.
and murder. Some of them murdered people when they were younger.
Don't be
kill
friends
anyone.
with Erebus.
Yeah,
Don't
Yeah,
hang
yeah.
out.
Erebus
Don't go
alone.
Yeah, don't
near
go near
Erebus.
him.
Leave
Yeah,
Erebus
yeah.
alone. If I catch any of you young whippersnappers hanging out with Erebus, you're going to be grounded. No fucking Xbox for a week. Cool. So welcome back, everybody, and I'm sure you're ready for it. It's the random topic generator, where we surprise you all with a surprising question from the random topic generator, picked with the use of the company dice, which, Welshie, I believe you have unlocked from the company dice box.
Of course I have.
Are you ready to roll the company dice?
It's a 6. You're in a Space Marine army. What battlefield role do you play? What unit are you going to be in? No characters. You can't just say you're a captain. None of us would be captains. We'd just be grunts. What unit are we going in?
Well, I used to have a T-shirt for about this. I'm going to be in the FBI, the female body inspector unit. I've already got the T-shirt, so I'm ready to go.
I'm sorry to tell you, but you'd be out of work because there aren't any female Space Marines. Yeah, I said
That's
it.
fine.
Yeah.
I'll sit by the side. I'll make sure. I'll tell you why there's no female Space Marines, because of the female body inspector. That's why, baby.
Yeah.
I come out. I'm like, that's a dude. That's a dude. That's a dude. It's a role that someone's got to do, and it's better than killing a bunch of people. So I'm going female body inspector.
Right.
Yeah, nice.
Matt?
I'm gonna be the servo skull.
Okay, why? That looks like a shit job to be.
You wouldn't even be conscious of being it.
No. All right. Well, the second best choice would be I'll be in one of the tanks because, like these Space Marines, so specifically Space Marine armies, these Space Marines drive tanks, right? So they only have 1,000 Space Marines as a chapter. And they put half of them in a fucking tank. So you're in a tank and you're in power armor. Like, how much safer can you be in a battlefield?
A big lumbering target, you know.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
like
but
a
you're in-
sneaky
you're in
boy
a-
or something.
Yeah, but you're in a tank in power armor.
Yeah, in a war with things with big guns that shoot tanks.
Yeah, but think, like, you know, not all the tanks get blown up. That's why they have
Yeah,
them.
no, fair play.
Well, I'm going to go off Matt's logic and pick something that more sensibly answers his question. I think I'd quite like to be a land speeder driver. I feel like
Oh,
you could
yeah.
just be zooming around, and you could
Well,
probably
got a
get
need for
away
speed.
with not really doing any fighting. Just zoom from one corner of the battlefield to the other. Maybe deliver some coffee or something. Maybe give the FBI inspector a lift to the next depot so he can check.
I've
that
got to
there's
get to
no
the east side of
females.
those quadrant stat. Someone saw a nip slip and they need me over there. So welcome back, everybody, to this, the last part of the show, the Lords of Law quiz, where I pit Matt and Welshie against each other in a battle to find out who is the Lord of Law. And this week, as we've been talking about, I've been trying to think about potentially rejoining the Warhammer community, getting back in there, and I need a brand spanking new army if I'm going to jump back in. Now, I think I've got 3 armies in my head that I'm thinking about, and I think like, which one should I do? So I want to want you to give me 3 armies that you think that I should play and reasons why, and see if they're, because if I get all the same as the ones that I've been thinking, then I know that, you know, those ones might be the right ones. I need votes, basically, votes.
Okay.
Or if you maybe open my eyes to something new with your excellent reasoning. So who wants to go first and try to determine my mind and convince me to play a different army?
I'll go first. I'm going to try and swing you over to the hive mind. I want a fellow Tyrannid player.
Okay.
I know you enjoy kit bashing. I know you enjoy sculpting smooth, curvaceous things that aren't necessarily trying to like kit bash flat panels for Space Marines.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you'd enjoy getting grotesque with green stuff and the milliput and making big Tyrannid monsters.
Okay,
but maybe you've had enough of that with your demons. Who knows?
Maybe. I am a bit monstered out, I'll be honest with you, but Tyrannids are pretty cool, and hopefully we'll get an update at one stage or another. So that's all.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, but don't keep them crossed too tight because it's not round the corner.
You'll know how I feel about that if you listen to this episode's rage section.
We do, exactly. So, Matt, what do you think? What army do you think that I should play? What do you think that I thought of I should play, or what do you think that I should play?
I don't even think this is right, but I think this is a really cool army. So I'm just going to say it anyway, and then I'd be interested to know what you think.
Okay.
Legion of the Damned.
Ooh.
Like, so going in for the Space Marine.
Mm-hmm.
Legion of the Damned, but ultra like Imperium demonified. Like they're on fire.
Ooh.
Throw the Age of Sigmar ghost kits together with the Space Marines. That's what I've had in my head.
Sorry, Stoney, you can't do that. You can't do that. I've just had this great idea to do that myself.
Oh no! Oh, damn
it!
It's
all yours.
I don't want to be accused of copying. Cool.
So yeah, you throw those 2 ranges together.
Well, you know what,
boom.
Matt? I'm going to give you 1 point for this because one of the things that I had in mind was doing some kind of bizarre Space Marines. I thought, like, you know, all I've done is kind of weird monsters and stuff like that. Why not go completely the other way and do some weird Space Marines? So I had in my mind maybe some Space Marines that had become like separated from the rest of the Imperium, a bit like kind of space sharks or maybe salamanders or something. Mm-hmm. So they had some kind of like natural stuff going on. They'd whittled their own bolters out of coconuts or something like that, you know. So yes, I'm going to give you a point for that, Matt. Thank you.
Nice.
You could always go for the creamy hogs. Finally,
yeah.
Oh, Space Marines on surfboards. Yeah.
Welshie, take a point for the creamy hogs. Why did I not think of that before? Christ. All right, creamy hogs for a point for Welshie and a point for Matt there. All right, Welshie. So
it seems like cheating to just go creamy hogs.
Oh, I don't know. I'm very tempted to make them my army now, though, to be fair.
Oh,
and that's really what wins all the points.
That's the point, right?
Yeah.
Well, then I'll elaborate. I want catfish firing weaponry.
Okay.
I want lots of bikes. Maybe you could use the Dark Angels Ravenwing rules for the creamy hogs and have a full biker gang with catfish-based weaponry. Maybe some harpoon guns.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe surfing.
They could ride your fishermen.
I think you're confusing the creamy hogs with the moist fists here.
Oh God, I am. God, that was unconscious.
Right. Point redacted from Welsh.
No. What about the moist fists though? Who's going to find
that's it?
Oh.
I could maybe the moist fist, the creamy fists.
Oh God. Okay, serious then. I've been thinking. I know what you really want. I was going to say it last, but Matt's edged ahead with a point, so I need to claim back a point here and steal this from him. I'm saying Gene Stealer Colts. They've got loads of personality, loads of kit bash and conversion potential. And I'm even thinking when you get sucked into the super competitive scene, the really competitive Gene Stealer Cult list at the moment is like 9 Achilles Ridge Runners. And I can't see any reason you can't use 9 limos with the weapons from Achilles Ridge Runners out the window.
Well, you see, that's... I mean, it's low-hanging fruit. I've made it very clear my affiliation to the Gene Stealer Cult limo, and there
Would
really
you really
is
want
only
to make
one.
9 of them?
Well, yes, it's the only.
Oh, right.
Yes, of course. What are you talking about? It's the greatest model that ever existed. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's low hanging fruit, so I've got to give you a point for that, because it is also top of my list. So
I needed that.
So, Matt,
I don't know. I mean, so many Chaos armies come to mind. I can't really imagine you. I've got two guesses. I can't imagine you not doing a Chaos army. So I imagine you doing some sort of crazy ass Khorne berserker, crazy Angron army. Yeah, that's guess number 2.
Okay. Oh no, I would never do a Khorne army. Yeah, no, I would never do a Khorne army. I'm not that lame. Although saying that, I did once do a Khorne army. I don't know if you remember when they had the when they had the Khorne Demon King rules. I made a Khorne Demon King army for one of the tournaments that we did back when we did tournaments together.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
that was when that was a weird rule set, wasn't it? Like
really strange.
The whole thing about Khorne is they don't have psykers or demons.
No, but you got like blood points. You got these blood points for doing things, and then if you got more blood points, you could make like demons appear. I think Khorne Demon King are still an army that you can play.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Actually, now I'm talking about it, maybe it'd be kind of fun. Anyway, no, it wasn't on my list. I'm going to have to stick to my guns, Matt. I'm sorry. I'm going to go no.
Okay. Shit, man. I don't know. One more guess.
All right, Welshie, final guess.
Oh, I don't think you like it, Bashing Orcs, because it's just sticking random bits together. There's not much sculpting potentially in an orc. I'm going to take the fact that I get to go ahead of Matt, and I'm going to go with what I know you've really got into the lore of recently, and I think you're going to make a whole army of Dark Eldar where everyone has a flip belt and is bent double and kind of rolls into action whilst trying to achieve what the flip belt is designed for.
The self-filleting flip belt army. It's the top of my list, Welshie. You're right. No, definitely. Yes. I really have. Dark Eldar are on my list. You've said two of my top 2 have been. Well, actually, my top 3 have been Dark Eldar. Well, the ones on my list were Dark Eldar, Genestealer Cult, and some kind of weird Space Marine faction. So
have we really helped at all?
Wow. I mean, the fact that you have agreed with the things that like has shown that I'm on the right course. But Matt, can Matt now win me over with a new army that was never on my list?
It would be very unlike Matt in Lords of Lore to come in and steal the show at the end.
This question worth all the beans.
Here come the Noise Marines. Here come the Noise Marines. Noise Marines.
Noise Marines. Well, Noise Marines. I've already got some. I've already kind of.
Noise Marines.
I've already kind of got
Noise
some.
Marines.
Already
kind of an army of Noise Marines. The Noise Marines. I'm blocking you out with noise.
I've already
Sonic
kind of
weaponry.
got some. Stop! You're being a fucking Noise Marine. Stop it. I've already got some Noise Marines, and they're kind of like a little back project I've got going on the back burner, as I've said. So I'm afraid, Matt, I'm going to have to give this one to Welshie with 2 of the armies that are on my list. So
Redemption.
Welshie, you have won the Lords of Lore. How do you feel?
I feel excellent, and I will be excited to have you by my side with your Genestealer Cult limo list.
All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Large Blast Podcast.
Peace out. Don't do chaos, don't do drugs.